Welcome to the Heartwork podcast, where we delve into stories, struggles, and triumphs of entrepreneurship, leadership, and personal growth. I'm Dr. Sarah.
And I'm Dr. Marisa. We're here to guide practitioners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and those just navigating the complexities of life on a journey of discovery that explores the dance between passion and strategy, heart and hustle.
With candid conversations, insightful interviews, and plenty of laughs, get ready to uncover how leading with heart can transform your business and life. Let's dive in.
I was just throwing it out there, but
No, I think that's great.
word vomit this. So
Yeah.
welcome back to another episode of the Heartwork podcast. Sarah and I have decided to record this because I was just processing something with her. And most people don't know, I don't think I've really ever shared this. I've alluded to it, but my grandparents, on my mother's side. So on my mother's side were full-blood Italian stallions. My nonna was from Rome, and my nonno was from Reggio Calabria, which is both areas in Italy. We still have family over there that we see and are in contact with. And after World War II, so fun little story for you historians out there. My great-grandfather, Nonno Pietro, he was a general in the Italian army, and when World War II happened and the Germans had invaded Italy, my grandmother, I grew up hearing all of the stories of the horrors that would happen and how they would round up all of the men and boys and put them in the town square and make them all drop their drawers to find out who was circumcised, who wasn't, and like shoot them on scene. And she's watching this from her apartment as like a teenage young girl, right? Like just horrific, and caves and just so much history and so much tragedy that happened there. And they had a Jewish family that lived in their apartment building, and my great grandmother, Nonna Gina, they hid some of the Jewish boys, and I'll never forget the story she told me about when German soldiers came and knocked on their door and offered my grandmother, my great grandmother, who was a very fit woman, but also, she had curves to love, her weight in gold, to give up location of this family that had lived in their building. And she didn't, and these boys lived. And so I have my grandmother, and my grandmother had a sister. So it was Anna Maria and Adele. And Adele fell in love with an American soldier because the Americans came in, they liberated the Italians. And she fell in love with an Italian soldier and went back to America with him. And it's interesting because the way I grew up, my grandmother always shared with me, my grandmother harbored resentments, a lot of them over the years. And she always shared with me how much her sister was the reason that she got pulled away from her home country, because my great grandparents told her, go to America, freaking get your sister and bring her ass back here. And so she went, and it wasn't until years later, I mean, this was maybe within the last 10 years, my mom found letters that my nonna had written to her sister in America saying, I can't wait to come to America. I can't wait to see you there. I can't wait to experience that. And like, she was so full of joy to be over there, let alone, wanting to bring her back. And of course, that's what happened. My nonna went to America and saw my great aunt and her life there, and ended up getting hooked up with one of the soldiers' friends. And so she got married to her first husband. They had a son, my Uncle Vito, and then they got divorced. Long and long behold, they went back to Italy, ended up meeting my actual nonno there, moved back to America, had my mom, had my uncle, all kinds of different things, lived in South Philly, moved back to Italy, lived there for several years, learned how to make pasta from a pasta maker in Rome, and then brought that back to the States. So they were on the boat, off the boat, on the boat, off the boat for years, and then settled in South Jersey and started a pasta manufacturing company. And lo and behold, my mother grows up, she goes to teaching, she meets my dad, they have me and my two sisters. And growing up, my mother's side, this is just culturally, right? Like the Italian side of the family is so strong and so steadfast. And it's like, you live for your family, you respect your elders, you respect those that came before you, you serve them. That's how you measure self-worth, is how much service that you give back to the family. I've always loved those qualities because family was always very important to me in the way that I was raised and grew up. And When my mother was done in her childbearing years, she also went back into being in the business, and we grew up in that pasta shop. Like I was like breathing flour in when I was like 4 weeks old, right? Like it just is it's literally a part of my blood. I would grow up there and play in the flour and make flour castles and help cut the pasta with the workers there. I mean, I literally grew up there. We were very close on my mother's side compared to my father's side. I just think culturally it was just so much more a part of our system and our unit. Every Christmas morning, like Christmas Eve, holidays, you would be there to open the shop at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning. You worked. It didn't matter if we couldn't even see above the counter. We were fetching ravioli from different places, boxing this, boxing that, doing it. And so as years went on and my mom and my two uncles worked in the business together, just family stuff came up. I think that everyone had faults, and I think everyone had unhealthy behaviors, attitudes, perspectives that exacerbated certain situations that perhaps didn't need to be exacerbated, or they weren't addressed in the way they should have been addressed. And even my Nonna was starting to suffer with Alzheimer's, which can very much change and alter reality. And some of that was taken advantage of. Some of it was obviously just of her own doing. My Nonna was just trying to keep everything running and operating. I swear, sometimes in the business, he would break machines just so that he could fix them. It's kind of a little running joke for us, but it was very much a unit that, through a lot of dysfunction, still had a business and a common goal to run. And my nonno would start to see this kind of breakdown between my uncles and my mom, and everyone had their like facet of the business, right? So my uncle really dealt with a lot of the outward facing marketing and like helped to create the Whole Foods contracts and really helped to take the business from where it started as this little garage shop into what it is now as a multi-million-dollar company. My other uncle really worked a lot in the productions and in the manufacturing and in the back end of things. And then my mom really helped to support all of that, but really took care of the retail shop and getting orders to the restaurants and running that factory work and helping with catering and community outreach. And she was, you know, the daughter face of the business and support of that, while also being caretakers of my grandparents as they grew in their elderly years and got sick. But with all of that rhythm and all of the family drama, when both of my grandparents passed on, my grandfather left the business in 3 equal parts. And that was something that wasn't settling with my uncles. And I'm not going to go into the whole story of all the who's, what's, wibbity, wits, and whys. But all this drama was not just affecting them, but it was trickling down into the family units. So my one uncle has 2 kids and 1 by marriage. My other uncle has 2 children. And then my mom had us 3 girls. And I mean, we grew up having sleepovers with each other and babysitting each other. And like, we spent so much time with each other. Our cousins were like best friends. There was a lot of age gap between my sisters and I and our one uncle's kids that were a lot younger, but we were very similar and close in age with my other uncle's kids. And that's just what it was. Like, you just spent time with your cousins and your family. But as all this family drama started to happen, like, it really started to separate us, because it was almost like this dysfunction in the sense of, well, if the parents don't get along, like, the kids can have relationships with the other parents. So like, because my aunt and my uncle and my mom and my other aunt and uncle like didn't get along, then like we couldn't really have a relationship with them until they had relationships with each other. And there was all this kind of facet around, well, if you don't have a relationship with me, then I can't have a relationship with you. And it just started to get really weird and really messy and just really dysfunctional. And to the point where they actually ended up buying my mom out of the business. And we have not really had communications. There's been lots of varying like animosity, hostilities, and just drama around the situations. And I've obviously, speaking from my side and my perspective, but like, we would stop getting invited to family gatherings. It became a very much like them against us type of a deal, which is so weird because I never grew up like with that as a thing. Like, that just wasn't allowed, right? Like, you figured it out, or you buried it under the rug like a lot of Italian cultures do, and you just fucking move on. Like, but that wasn't it. And so it was so weird to be like, okay, well, that's not our situation and our drama isn't your drama. Like, why do we have to suffer from this situation? Like, why can't we be a part of our cousins' communions? Like, these are such important parts of their lives culturally and like with us. Why do we have to suffer from that? And it was like, well, I can't invite you if I'm not going to invite your mom. And then it was like, well, do we even want to like go support that if you're not willing to like try and mend things with our parent? Like it was just such a dysfunctional, like weird situation. But years and years go by, right? And you're like, you miss that family that you had. You miss the dream and the idea of what you thought it was going to look like forever and forever and ever, because it was all you ever grew up with and all you ever knew. And I think because I'm coming into a season of life now where Alex and I are talking about having our own family and what traditions we want to pass on and what we want that to look like, it's made me really reflect back on what I had growing up and then what that loss is actually representing now in my life. And I'm really processing that a lot because if I see my cousins, like we hug, we say hi, but there's not that same level of connection anymore. For a long time when I would see those uncles, like I would very much like try to avoid them, or I would say something snarky. Like I just felt so hurt, not just for me, but what I would see my mom go through. And the same way that I'm sure my cousins, from their perspective, would see their parents and what they were going through. And it really sucks to be collateral damage sometimes in a situation that you have no control over. And so I've been processing this with one of my heart coach, Pablo, as we've mentioned him multiple times before. And just like the, again, amount of hurt and sadness for what that is, or like, I can't be in the same room with this person. Sometimes I don't even know how I'm going to act around them because all of this shit can bubble up from my insides and either be really like ugly looking or just can be really sad. It can be lots of regret. Like I want it to change. I want it to look different, but will it ever look different? Like, and then you get so granular. You're thinking like, does this generation need to pass on before I can actually have a relationship like with my cousins? And then that makes you sad because there's so much life that you could have lived with that. Like this side of the family wasn't at my wedding. Like that would have been such a big part of our life to think like, if I looked at myself as a 7 or 8-year-old girl to say like your godfather is not going to be there like when you tie the knot, like it's sad. It's just sad to think about these things. And obviously I still get emotional about it. And so he's just been encouraging me to like explore more of those feelings because he's like, listen, no, it's not your fault. And yeah, like I participated in some of the conversations or again, some of those snarky comments that I may have referenced. I'm giving the very short abridged version, but like you have to learn how to forgive too. Because regardless at the end of the day, if time continues to go on and nothing changes, it gets way, way harder to like bridge that gap. Like if you try and reach out in 15 years with no contact, not saying that it wouldn't happen, but it's much harder for you to connect again with your cousins, or maybe much harder for you to connect with that side of the family. He's like, I don't even know if that's something you even want to do. This is a very dysfunctional situation and there's a lot of hurt and it's like cities in Italy, like they have their soccer teams and their people and like you can't like the other people from the other cities. Like it's just so fucked up sometimes. Like it is what it is, ingrained in your life. But he just encouraged me to continue to evaluate that and just forgive. And I'm like, I don't even know, I was just recently going to go home for summer break and I was like, they could be at the shore house. We still share a family shore house together with one of the uncles and their kids and his wife. And it's so weird because as a young girl, like I used to look up to my aunt for like everything, like I valued her and I would look up to her for so much and she was such a big part of our lives. And then for that to like, again, change. And now here you are in this situation where like, it would be the best to like go to Uncle so-and-so's and like hang out for the night, and like that not to be the same. I was like, I don't even know how to be sometimes when I'm in that space. And he's like, well, why can't you just be you? Like, why can't you just be you? Just you're a kind person. It doesn't mean you have to sit there and like lay over like a doormat, or that you have to have your mother watch an interaction that doesn't feel authentic to you or doesn't respect you or doesn't honor her. But it also doesn't mean that you have to disrespect yourself or dishonor yourself because you're holding on to, again, more of that grudge in that situation in the past that wasn't yours to hold on to and wasn't yours, that you necessarily participated in to the same degree that they did, right? He's like, so why don't you just be open, and why don't you just see what actually comes through when that happens? Like, why can't you just say hi and then call it a day? Like, it doesn't mean to be that you want to learn everything about their lives over the last 10, 15 years, but like, why can't it just be that? And one of the things that he's always said, not just with this situation, but like in general in the past, like, don't also discredit what God can do in other people's lives and in their hearts with time. So like, you may have and hold on to this thinking that they're having and hold on to it. But what if he's sitting there also wondering the same thing that you are? Right. And like, I think about that. Like, what are they thinking when they see me or my sisters or my mom in situations? Like, does it ever change? Does it not? And he's like, you can't predict that. You can't try and control it. All you can do is just control the way that you show up in that situation. And so my husband and I, we were down the shore, and my uncle and aunt were there for a period of time. And I saw my aunt letting out the dogs, and I said hi and gave her a hug, and just we chatted about like the weather or something and like coming down, and then that was it. And then I saw my uncle, and I said hi and how's it going? And it wasn't like it was anything to write home about or anything different. But when I left those interactions, I didn't feel like constricted. I didn't feel like that tight knot in my gut and in my inner being in the same way that I have or had when I was holding on so tightly to all of the years of past hurt and walking into a singular situation and vomiting out hurt from that, right? Like a response or reaction from that. Like, I remember one time my uncle, when I sold my practice in South Jersey, one of my uncles had said to my mom in the presence of me, like, isn't this so great? Now you're going to be able to like go out to Iowa all the time and see your daughter because you won't be in this business anymore. And I literally, like, my head went like 180 degrees to him, and I was like, she didn't ask to have to do that though. Like, because of the whole leaving the business situation under not the best pretense. And so I would feel restricted after that, right? It was like, yeah, I said something that was like honoring to my mom, and also like, listen, like, you know what I know what you know, and I know what you've done. And like all of that, it's fierceness and like Italian fire just coming out of me in the same way that my grandparents did. But I don't want to end up like my nonna, who had resentments for this person doing that and resentments for that person that, and then sharing that with her future, like sharing that with me, so that I carried a resentment against these people without even knowing that, because of the generational trauma that was passing down. So it was really refreshing to be in this situation. And I even got to see one of my cousins this weekend being down, and got to hug her and hold her. And then my uncle was there too and said goodbye to him in the same way. And it was interesting because we were leaving at that time, and my husband was there, and my mom immediately goes like, why couldn't he say goodbye to your husband? And I was like, well, like like no matter what you do something wrong, right? Because there's just so much hurt and so much pain and so much like animosity that's existed in that situation. It's like, he was like, well, he said, I saw him earlier this morning. So we kind of said hello, goodbye, whatever. Now I don't need to go down there and say goodbye to her uncle, and he doesn't need to necessarily come up here and like shake my hand to say goodbye at this point. Like there's not that same connection. So it's, in the way that my mother or my uncle may see something is different in a way that my husband and I might see something, because we've just experienced it differently. It's not, my mother carries years and years and years differently than my husband only knows the situation for the last 7, right? Or 6. So just as I continue to process this with you and Pablo and myself, just like for anyone who's going through situations where there has been a lack of compassion, a lack of humanness, a lack of health emotionally as you navigate really sticky situations, especially when it can come with years of generational trauma and, stuff where you are absorbing or taking things on as collateral damage when you weren't necessarily the one to do it. I did feel really peaceful after those encounters and interactions because it was like, I can do this and it not have to mean something. It doesn't have to mean that I'm dishonoring my mom just because I'm saying hello and responding as a human being. It also doesn't necessarily mean that I am all of a sudden ready to just like jump on in and have this hunky-dory, like lucky, happy-go-lucky relationship with this side of the family that hasn't been there for years because of the choices that this other generation has made that have continued to affect my generation of my sisters and my cousins. But in fact, you can just remain open and you can be kind yet firm. You can be honoring to yourself yet not restricting to yourself. You can be capable of experiencing the goodness of situations without having to carry all the hurt and throw that at the person that you think has hurt you, but they're just another human being too that also comes with their hurt and stuff, and maybe they're just looking for connection in that way. And so I have no idea what that means for now. I have no idea what that means for the future. I have no idea if we're ever going to have the relationship that we had in the past, or if that could look different in the future, if it's done and it's just about being cordial at this point. But something that really was refreshing was just this a little bit of like a flip switch of like, you can go in that situation differently and you can forgive them for what the situation has produced, while also being honoring to yourself and knowing that, you wouldn't have wanted it to be that way. There's probably still a lot of hurt there. There's a lot of hurt there for me. There's a lot of feelings of like regret and lost time, but that it doesn't have to continue to accumulate. Even if it's never going to look the same way, it doesn't mean that animosity has to be the dividing force. It may just be space, it may just be time. But again, you never know what the universe is doing in other people's hearts and minds that could also change over time too. You just don't know. Or what the situation could actually look like in the future. Only time will tell. But just something interesting because, again, it was a much lighter way to operate in those spaces. And that felt really good. So it doesn't mean everything's gone. It doesn't mean that I have to carry it.
So thank you for joining us on another episode of the Heartwork podcast. We hope today's conversation has inspired you to lead with heart in your business and life.
If you enjoyed this, subscribe so you never miss a release, rate our show, leave us a review, get on our VIP email list, and join our exclusive Facebook group, The Heartwork Life, to plug into our community and learn from us and other heart-led entrepreneurs on a weekly basis.
We look forward to chatting with you next time.
Bye!